The dining room had become a wound that wouldn't close. Every evening, Richard walked past the table where black roses once sat and felt the sting spread through the house again. He ate standing by the kitchen counter now, picking at food he barely tasted, listening to a silence that sounded like Jennifer's laughter held underwater. By morning, the city resumed its rhythm, sirens in the distance, vendors hawking, generators coughing, but inside his mansion, time stalled. The maid's room remained sealed the way the police left it, bed made too neatly, wardrobe half empty, a single hair tie forgotten on the dresser like a breadcrumb from a vanishing act. The farewell letter lay in his desk drawer. He read it some nights in the blue light, learning nothing new, believing it less each time. Word traveled faster than he could move. At the office, his secretary, Simi, began to field strange calls at odd hours. "Did your boss mistreat his maid?" a woman's voice whispered once, then hung up. Another night, "You should tell him to pray." Simi started locking the front door in daylight. The city would not give him cover. At a charity auction in Ikoyi, flashbulbs popped like fireworks as Lagos elites drifted past sculptures and champagne. That was when she arrived, Jennifer, in a white suit that fit like a verdict, a slim clutch resting in her palm as if it were a weapon. She did not look at Richard at first. She smiled at politicians, air-kissed wives who both feared and adored her, and then, when the room had felt her presence, she found him. "Good to see you supporting the arts," she said, voice velvet laid over wire. "Good to see you finding a crowd that claps," he replied. A man stepped into frame then, one of Jonathan's quiet lieutenants, face unreadable, handshake firm. Others followed, orbiting Jennifer like discreet moons. The message was not subtle. Jonathan did not need to attend, his shadow was RSVP enough. Later, in the garage beneath his office, the air smelled of hot metal and rain. Richard pressed his key fob, his SUV blinked. Jennifer slid out from the pillar's shadow as if the building had breathed her out. "Love rejected," she said, "always returns with claws." "Threatening me in my car park?" he asked. How cinematic. Her smile did not reach her eyes. "I'm not threatening you, Richard. I'm reminding you. You cannot erase me. Ask your maid." The words spidered over his skin. "Where is she?" Jennifer tilted her head, almost tender. "Gone. Like good manners." He stepped forward. The security camera's red light watched them blinklessly. "If you've touched anyone in my house, you'll what?" She leaned close enough that her perfume rewired the air. "Pray, call your uncle?" She straightened his lapel with 2 fingers, a gesture so intimate it felt like a slap. "Tell him I said hello." That night the rain finally came, dense, tropical, forgiving nothing. Richard drove the city in circles until dawn made the streets honest again. He parked outside the clubhouse he knew belonged to Jonathan and watched black SUVs inhale and exhale men. Jonathan emerged last, blue Agbada drinking the stormlight, a cane he did not need but enjoyed. Their eyes met across the rain. Inside the foyer, Jonathan waited for him as if they'd scheduled it. "You look tired," he said, almost kindly. "Call her off," Richard replied. "Whatever you think this is." "This," Jonathan said, "is what happens when boys play with fire and then complain about heat." He studied his nephew's face, searching for the old arrogance. Finding only fear, he softened his tone. "Focus on your business. Keep your head down. Weather passes. And if it doesn't?" Jonathan smiled with no teeth. "Then learn to swim." The calls intensified. Simi began keeping a notebook, numbers without names, times without sense, phrases that felt like fragments from the same mouth. She left willingly. "Tell him to stop digging. Pray for mercy." Richard bought new locks. He started carrying dread like a wallet. On a Tuesday that pretended to be ordinary, he returned home to find a window ajar in the living room, rain lingering on the sill. On the coffee table sat an envelope the color of ash. No name on the front. His fingers did not tremble this time. He opened it. A glossy photograph slid into his palm. The maid. Alive. Eyes blown wide with the kind of fear that does not forget. Behind her, a wall he did not recognize. At the edge of the frame, a hand white-sleeved, ringless gripped her shoulder lightly, almost politely. There was a note beneath the photo, neat, feminine, practiced, "This is not over." P.S. The letter was beautiful. You nearly believed it. For a long moment, the house held its breath. Then the power cut, the room fell into sudden darkness, the generator stumbling before catching. Richard stood very still, the photograph warming in his hand like a living thing. He did not call Jonathan. He did not call the police. He walked to the dining room, the wound, and placed the photograph in the center of the table. Rain ticked against the windows. Somewhere far off, a siren stitched the city to itself. "Okay," he said to the empty house, to the roses that weren't there, to the woman who haunted every mirror he passed. "Okay." Outside, the storm turned. Inside, the battlefield finally named itself. The walls of Richard's world felt like they were closing in. Jonathan's silent but steady grip on Legos tightened daily, Jennifer's venomous return left scars deeper than any blade, and the mysterious disappearance of his maid had pulled the rug from under his feet. The boardroom, once his fortress, had become a circus of whispers. His home no longer felt like a sanctuary. Every day, Richard fought to keep his composure. But inside, he was breaking. His hands trembled when he reached for his tie. His jaw locked each time his phone lit up with another anonymous threat. Alone in his luxury living room, he had begun to ask the unthinkable, was this battle already lost? But fate had its own script. The call came late in the night. A familiar voice, gravelly with age yet unyielding, poured through the line. "My son, I hear they are trying to bury you alive in Lagos." Richard froze. That voice. That authority. That fire. It was his father, Odogwon Chifokpara village head, fearless warlord, the man the people called the King with 9 lives. Legends told of how he survived assassination attempts, poisonings, even spiritual warfare. Each time, he rose again, stronger, feared, and respected across kingdoms. Richard's heart thumped. He had kept his father out of this modern mess deliberately. The old man was a relic of tradition, unpolished for city life, too raw for corporate tables. But hearing his voice now felt like an ancient drumbeat waking something buried in Richard's soul. "Baba, Dad, oh Daddy," Richard whispered. "Enough weakness," the chief cut in. "You are my blood. You cannot allow a woman and a politician to trample your name. I will be in Lagos at dawn." The next morning, Lagos shook. News spread quickly in the high circles. The chief's convoy rolled into the city, long black SUVs snaking through traffic, police escorts clearing the way. Curious onlookers pulled out their phones, whispering, "That's the king with 9 lives." Jonathan heard. Jennifer heard. And for the first time in weeks, they hesitated. Jennifer, the so-called boss lady, smirked to cover her unease. "A village chief," she scoffed, sipping her wine. "What does he know about Lagos?" But even her tone wavered. She knew his kind, the old warlords who didn't play by city rules. Their authority wasn't printed on letterheads, it was carved into fear, loyalty, and bloodlines. When Richard finally met his father at their Ikoyi residence, something shifted. The chief walked in wearing his agbada, blue with golden embroidery, his lion staff in hand, chin high, eyes sharp. He wasn't just a man, he was a statement, power in its most unfiltered form. He studied Richard silently, then spoke. "Jonathan thinks he is untouchable. Jennifer thinks beauty is power. They have forgotten one thing, blood remembers blood. Tradition bows to no modern game, and you, my son, will not bend again. You will rise." Richard swallowed hard, feeling a surge he hadn't felt before, not boardroom confidence, not business swagger, but something older, rawer. A weapon forged in legacy. For the first time, Richard smiled. That night, while Jonathan plotted and Jennifer sharpened her claws, Richard stood at his balcony, overlooking the restless city. Lagos wasn't just a battlefield anymore, it was about to become an arena of survival. And with his father at his side, the war had only just begun. The message at Jonathan's clubhouse spread like wildfire. For a man who had built his empire on intimidation and ruthless efficiency, Jonathan's trembling hands were enough to shake his loyal circle. None dared to speak, but their stolen glances said it all. The balance had shifted. Richard's father, the man whispered about in hushed tones back in the village, was no longer a legend confined to rural folklore. He was here, in Lagos, walking into Jonathan's world with all the authority of ancestry, tradition, and raw power. Jonathan sat alone in the dim light of the clubhouse lounge, the red wax seal broken on the table before him. He replayed old stories of the king, his cunning, his survival through 9 assassination attempts, his brutal victories in both politics and tribal wars. Now, the king was stepping onto his turf, not as a relic of the past, but as a living reminder that some battles are fought with shadows, not just bullets. Meanwhile, Jennifer found herself caught between awe and fear. She had never seen Jonathan hesitate before. To her, Jonathan had been the immovable force, the untouchable godfather. Yet here he was, rattled by a single line of Igbo scrawled in ink. She began to reconsider.